And there he is, the one and only Mr. David Ellefson. How you doing, Dave?
Hey, what's going on, everybody? How are you?
Good, man. Good. So, you know what? I got to ask right off the bat. How the hell do you do it? You, I mean, you are an inspiration, man. You do so much. I mean, whether it's Megadeth or, solo stuff now, author, EMP records, I mean, it's nonstop with you. Ellefson Films, how do you do it?
Well, first of all, I guess, look, I've been drug and alcohol free for 30 years, so that helps. So I can actually go to sleep and wake up at normal times, and I get a lot of energy, I guess. And you know what? I got a good team. None of this stuff is all just me. It's all a team, and so as a team, we get to shoulder the burdens, but we also get to share in the victories together too, and there's in fact, right as I was making this call, I was just thinking about how busy of a day it became. I had a phone interview this morning, a couple of other things I had to do on Zoom, and Tom hit me on something else, and I'm actually just now working on some Megadeth songs to go and record. I'm going to be going to Nashville later this week to get started recording the Megadeth album, and I got one more song to record, bass for our solo record, and you know what I mean? So I was just going, oh my gosh, this has turned into I thought this was going to kind of be a vacation week, and suddenly it is now D-Day, so things are happening. So, but it's all good, man.
Do you actually sit there and schedule? I mean, is it a very scheduled situation with all your different, endeavors that you're always doing?
It kind of turns into that. This week is turning into that for sure. I mean, look, tomorrow I thought I was going to be going and playing golf, and I'd be out riding my bike, and just, because originally I was scheduled to go to Nashville in 2 weeks to start, and we just moved it up a week, so suddenly that kind of pushed the immediacy on that. But I'm excited about it because, we originally were going to be in the studio with Megadeth in Nashville back in March before everything shut down. So just the fact that things are starting to open up around the country is good. I think here in Arizona where I live, we've certainly felt the impact a lot less than other places in the country. And I think the same is true for Nashville, fortunately. Yeah. So, so it's exciting to be moving forward with stuff because I think that's probably one of the biggest frustrations probably we all felt was, we're locked down, locked in. But as you can see, probably from our team Ellefson here, we didn't let that stop us from getting things done, I'm really happy about that.
That's what I was going to say. Did you use this time and create even more than you usually would?
I think so. I mean, originally I was going to be in London. Me and Thom Hazeart were going to be going over there to be working with Andy, our guitar player, and our engineer Alessio in London on the solo record right after Easter. And of course, those plans were conveniently changed for us. So, rather than sit around and lament, I mean, look, I think it probably helped me get my home studio stuff in better shape. I don't like making records remotely. I like being in the room. I just think there's an energy and there's a vibe. Sure. That happens when you're in the room. But in this particular case, at least the songs are written for the next Ellefson solo record. So, creating remotely, I really am not a fan of. Recording remotely, hey, sometimes you got to do what you got to do, and I've made a lot of records like that, so I know how to do it. And most of us in our world, we kind of are adapted to that now. But I think. I think the thing that's always the inspiring part of this is just the ideas. Tom will call me at 8:00 at night and say, hey, let's go on a live stream real quick. We should talk about, A, B, and C. I'll hit him first thing in the morning because I'm up early. He's up late. I'm up early. So I guess between the two of us, we cover all 24 hours of the day. But, when inspiration hits, I'll get up and say a little prayer and have my coffee and, read a book or a couple little things. I'm a Lutheran kid, so I read my Bible in the morning, you know what I mean? And that's always just kind of an inspiration to just kind of be quiet, just be still, be quiet. I think that's probably one of the hardest things to do, yet oftentimes it's where some of the biggest ideas come from is in that moment of just being still and quieting everything around you. And so when I wake up is that time, because as much as I want to kind of wake up and get running, my body just naturally wakes up on its own time. And those are the moments I think that are are really nice to sort of reflect on yesterday, sort of have a thought on what's coming down the day. And, you know, I heard a pastor at church one time say, he said, don't cram your day so full of stuff that you don't have time for God to show up, you know? And I think that's a big part of this is my week suddenly, like I said, it kind of was kind of a half-filled calendar to a full-filled calendar. And when things get busy and things fall into your schedule, I just kind of look at that as, you know, that's the creator up above just saying, okay, let's do this, you know, and that's why I don't question those things. And there's a time years back where I used to question, should I or shouldn't I? And I think it finally hit me with the urging of some good friends, of course, but it just kind of hit me as like, you know, when the email shows up in my inbox, that's probably fate and the universe saying, you know, you should go after this. So just do it. Just say yes and be agreeable and get on board and go.
Nice. Now, have you always had like the aspirations to do all these different endeavors through the years? Was it something you, like in the back of your mind, you always like wanted to do or just didn't have the time? Like, especially like, you know, back in the day when, you know, Megadeth was like the super full-time thing of the 80s and 90s for you?
You know, no, not at all.
No.
Honestly, you know, I was just happy playing bass, being in a band. And, you know, I think there comes this point once I started having a family, I started going, wow, I've got all my eggs in one basket with Megadeth, and that could be risky. Just in any line of work, just having all your eggs in one basket. I mean, people go through this with jobs just all the time. I think, you know, the era that I grew up on a farm, so my family's been in the farming business, so it's always been very entrepreneurial, and quite honestly, it's very similar to the music business. You know, you sort of reap what you sow. Mm-hmm. And so if you don't put forth the effort, you know, there's not going to be a crop at the end of the year. So I guess probably sort of raised in that mindset. But as I see other friends and family members, of course, who, you know, the day of sort of working for a job 30 years, getting a pension and a goal and a watch at the end of it, like those days are pretty much behind us, you know, and that's just not the world we live in. So I think, you know, it sort of forces a person to be a little more, kind of keep your mind open to other things that come along. And I think it kind of forces us to live a little more in the moment. And I think certainly live within your means. You know, that's the other thing that a bunch of years ago, I just went, you know, I've got to start saving some money, you know, because I'm getting some good years here and I've had some good successes, but you know, these things can, you know, this too shall pass, you know, so I started diversifying just investments. I diversified my time into things other than just music, you know, and you know, that has helped me. What I said to myself was basically, I want to play music the rest of my life. And I don't know how much money there's going to be in the music business. So I need to set my life up in a way that I can always play music. And I found when I play music for free and for fun, I always have more fun with it. And when and it's not to put anything against the paycheck, but profit motive music is different than passion motive music. Yeah. And so, and then the two can coexist for sure. I think you find your biggest reward when you're in it for the passion. Anytime I've ever tried to play music for money, there never was enough money and I didn't really enjoy the music. You know, so, those are just some things that I learned along the way is to kind of get my life in a position where I can wake up every day and play music, or not, take the day off and go play golf if I want, you know, and that required some discipline and it required some restructuring of how I spent my money and, you know, some of that stuff. And I'm glad to say that I think I'm there now, you know, so I can do these things. And like this conversation today, we can have it in the middle of the afternoon and I don't have to like take off time from work or do anything to do that. Like I can really, you know, this is just kind of part of how I roll every day now.
Do you think so? All your different like endeavors that you've been doing and handling the past so many years, do you think that's kind of set you up to do music like, you know, like your new solo album or Altitudes and Attitudes and other stuff you've done in the past? Do you think it's all kind of set it up, or do you think it's more the day and age of music today?
It's a little of both. You know, I had when Megadeth disbanded in 2002, that was the big wake up call. You know, that was the day I dreaded was going to come. We had been through a lot as a band, not only internally, and obviously we did lineup changes and just all those things that you deal with internally, and those things you try to control as best you can. But then there's external things you have no control of, like Nirvana showing up, you know. you know, the Seattle music showed up in the early 90s and just completely changed the entire landscape of rock music. MTV stopped playing heavy metal and completely. And, you know, it changed everything, you know, the look and everything. And look, young people always are the innovators, and the young people are the ones who always are the trendsetters of young music. And it's not us legacy guys. But the one thing us legacy guys have is we have the history, we've got the story to tell. And people will always come back to hear that story as long as you're willing to tell it. And whether it's through concerts, whether it's through books, interviews like this, or even setting up new enterprises. And I think so for me, the new stuff that I've been doing, like with Ellefson Films and the solo album and Ellefson Books and those things, excuse me, those are kind of like me writing the new song of my life.
Gotcha.
You know, so that to me is largely the creative inspiration now moving forward.
Now, something you did too recently for your youth foundation was you hand delivered bass that you sold on eBay. That was part of a fundraiser to a fan who bought it in Arizona.
Right. Well, the funny thing was, yes, you're right. I just did that yesterday. And the funny thing was, Tom and I did a live stream on, what's today, Tuesday? So I guess it was Sunday night, right? So, Tom had sent me the address for the guy Bill. And literally while we were on the stream, I looked at the address and I went, wait a minute, this guy lives in Tucson. Like, why would I go to FedEx and, you know, have them send it down the road? You know, when I thought, you know, I could use to get out of the house. I haven't been to Tucson in a while, and, you know, maybe I'll grab some tacos or something, you know. So it hit me that night, Sunday night, when we were on our stream. So yesterday I just booked out of the house around a little before noon, and just a little under 2-hour drive, and we went right to his house and knocked on the door and delivered it. And Tom said, hey, we've got somebody heading down your way. We're going to just drop it off to you. He didn't tell him it was going to be me. But, so it was a fun little surprise for both of us. It was a fun little moment.
That's super cool. Now you mentioned Tom a lot, and Tom is like your right hand man, and he's on your solo album now. Why do you think it took you guys so long to actually do music together?
You know, it's funny. He started. We'd never. I mean, again, I knew he was a big music fan, of course, as we both are, and you know, history. And he's like 10 years younger than me, so. You know, he grew up on Megadeth. He sees obviously my relevance in that, and Megadeth's relevance in the whole world. In fact, he's got this idea that I told him he should turn into a film called "Imagine a World Without Megadeth," which was kind of based on imagine if Dave didn't leave Metallica, imagine if Megadeth never happened, and you know, just sort of, can you imagine what the world would be like had we not had Megadeth and what it meant to so many people? And those are the kind of sort of themes that Tom will throw at me. And one of those was when he called me up and said, hey, Combat Records is available. We can acquire the name and the trademark, and we can relaunch the label. And he had a very different view of it because he's a kid who grew up buying the Megadeth records and Exodus and Circle Jerks and Dark Angel and all the stuff that was on Combat. Whereas I was an artist on the label, so I was less concerned about what was going on around me. I was just kind of more concerned about, you know, me and Megadeth, our own path forward, you know. So, you know, it's interesting. I always say, you know, in this business, you have to have a cheerleader. You know, it's not enough to just you as your own, you know, either you or your band guys or whatever to write a song. Like, first of all, you need an audience, of course, but, you know, you need a manager, an agent, somebody who's you're a real cheerleader, someone who's willing to, you know, really just fight for you at all costs. And Tom is that guy. You know, he fell into my life kind of out of nowhere. We'd known each other back in the early 2000s. He was managing a band called Chimera. And at that time I was managing the artist relations program for Petey. And so we had and Chimera was an artist on my roster at Petey. And that was our first discussion. But then, you know, he hit me up because he was doing a soundtrack endeavor for Shout Factory. They were re-releasing a Wes Craven film called Shocker, and Megadeth had a song on that. We did a cover of Alice Cooper's No More Mr. Nice Guy. Right. And so Tom saw the relevance. He goes, man, these people, you know, Desmond Child, Kane Roberts, who played guitar, and Alice Cooper, and then of course Megadeth. And it's like he just saw the significance of all these artists that were on this soundtrack, and because the movie was, it's a horror movie, and it was kind of a B-level movie. It wasn't a big box office sensation. The soundtrack went largely unnoticed. I mean, Megadeth, we got some good love off of it with that song. But I remember, that was 1989, right? When that song was serviced out to radio. And Megadeth was not really a mainstream band yet. We were on our third record. We had not yet made Rust in Peace. So, we were known, but not so much certainly with radio. With radio, we were still pretty raw and rowdy and pretty dangerous to be on the radio. So I remember when radio programmers would play that, when stations would play that song, they wouldn't even say Megadeth. They'd say, and that was a cover of Alice Cooper's song, No More Mr. Nice Guy. Next up, we have The Weather, Like, they wouldn't even say Megadeth. So, I mean, that's like kind of where we resided in the trajectory of music and just kind of how dangerous the whole thing was at that time, just the image and the rawness of Megadeth. So, that Tom and I connected there. And then from there, we put together EMP Label Group and Combat and everything else that we've done. And I was on a tour. We created a platform called Bass Story that I could go out and do what really kind of became my solo concerts, quite honestly. It started as sort of a clinic, but it was in a nightclub, and we could have, I had some opening bands play with me, and then I had one of the bands, stay behind and play with me. So rather than doing like a clinic where you sort of play like a laptop or an MP3 or something, you could actually really play with a real band behind you, and it created this really clever platform. And we were doing a little tour, and I needed someone to sing a couple Megadeth songs for me. And Tom's like, dude, I know Megadeth songs. Like, what do you need? I'll stand over on the side and sing it. So that was originally how we even started playing any music together. Is I just, me and the band were ripping through a couple of Megadeth classics for the fans, and Tom just stood over there on stage left, kind of in the dark singing, and, wow. And then we collaborated. We wrote a song while we were on that tour, and that song became Vultures, which was the lead track off of the first solo album we did last year, the Ellefson Sleeping Giants album. And from there, the collaboration kept going. I write, and Tom will put lyrics and things to it, and he came up with the idea to do the Post Malone song Over Now, which we did, and so, it's been a fun collaboration, me and Tom. We're just, we're kind of like just best friends, good buddies, call each other up and just say, hey, you want to do this? Hey, wouldn't it be great if we did that? And somehow we make it all happen.
That's cool. Now, the Post Malone tune, now, especially once he did the duet with Ozzy, and now you guys doing a cover, and, he recently did like a whole Nirvana set online, and he's really starting to cross over more into the hard rock metal world. Do you think he can bring, and the way I'm looking at it, do you think he can bring some of the fans from his genre of music over to the hard rock metal world and give the hard rock metal world a boost?
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, everyone's a rocker at heart. I mean, on some level, even if you're the most prudish person ever, when you hear, I don't know, pick a song. It could be Sweet Child of Mine, right? There's something about any rock song that stirs this sort of primitive, primordial, animal inside of us. That's the spirit of rock and roll, and at the same time, the hardest rockers can often appreciate Eminem and, guys like that who were probably, again, kind of the first, white hip hop guy to not be a rocker guy, but go straight over into the hip hop world. But yet with all the brashness and of course his Detroit upbringing and funny, the things he gave Mile Road. I mean, I remember that when we used to play at Blondie's and the Token Lounge and the clubs we used to play up there in Detroit back in Killing Is My Business and Peace Sells. So when Eminem came out, I was like, oh my gosh, Chuck Beeler, our drummer, is from Detroit, So it's I was like, wow, I didn't grow up in the hood and that wasn't really my neighborhoods, but I've been through there and I've passed by them and I played music in those clubs in that area. So it's all of a sudden Eminem, I related to him. I was kind of like, wow, all right, this kid's kind of got something going on here, and it was very bold and in your face. So what I found what was interesting about Post Malone is here's Posty, another, white kid from Texas, I think, a real sweet, kind gentleman of a person, but he sings these lyrics but yet the music behind it isn't really, it's not hard, it's not heavy. It's got this soft, almost very white R&B thing behind it.
Right.
Yet what the themes that he's singing about are very hard, you know, and it's clever, you know. The delivery doesn't always have to come at you with a wall of guitars and amps and that's one way to do it, but it doesn't always have to be like that. And I think when you've been in the business a while like we have, I think all of us can appreciate when someone like Post comes along and delivers what could be a very rock and roll message, but not in its traditional rock and roll vehicle. And, you know, kudos to him for that.
Now, with the album Sleeping Giants that you and Tom put out, you know, a lot of it's like older material that you had, like a lot of demo stuff. You had stuff on there with John Bush on vocals or David Glenn Isley on vocals. Have you thought about, like, it made me think like doing like what Slash did, you know, 10 years ago, maybe longer, where he did an album where it was all different vocalists. Did you think about doing that at all, or is that like something on your radar for the future?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. Michael Schenker, you know, MSG, the Michael Schenker group, was always a thing that I followed. You know, I was a big fan of UFO, and then when he went solo, the Michael Schenker group. But you know, Michael's not a vocalist, so we always had different vocalists.
Right.
And he even just did a recent tour where he had all those vocalists from all the years.
Right.
You know, Robin McCulley and you know, most of them, I guess, were there, you know, on stage singing. And I thought it was very clever because he's a fantastic guitar player and a writer, but he's not a singer. And I am a singer. I think probably the hardest thing for me is I write all the time, and I can write lyrics and melodies and vocal and riffs and music and stuff, but is finding that sound that where my voice fits in it. And quite honestly, my voice fits much better. I'm a very clean singer. You know, Tom is a very rough, rowdy, can do the death metal thing. That's not my deal, you know. And I think that's what I appreciated when I started to hear Ghost. It was just like, okay, this is really cool. It's got this, you know, clearly a metal, hard rock sound to the music, but the singing is real clean and it's very melodic. It reminded me of more stuff from like the 80s, like Journey and Styx and stuff like that, you know. And that's stuff I grew up on, you know. So, you know, my voice tends to be very clean. Even as a kid, when I would sing in bands growing up, you know, I would sing some lead, and then when I sang harmony, I love when the Van Halen sound, the first couple Van Halen records, especially the first one, you know, Running with the Devil, right out of the gate.
Right.
There's this wild maniac lead singer, yet behind it were these really smooth, perfectly in tune backing vocals that were there's like a choir. I mean, they just were so good. So I always said, you know, I'm kind of the Michael Anthony backup singer, you know, like even when we were writing the song Peace Sells But Who's Buying in the jam room, and I think Dave had a mic and he was singing it, trying to go through the, you know, getting the lyrics to make sure that they fit in over the music. And there was another mic there, so I went up and I started singing on the end of what I call the Michael Anthony part. Peace sells but who's buying, peace sells but who's buying. You know, I went right away up for the third, you know, that's just the note that I go for, you know, when I sing backup vocals.
That's cool. Now, how about, you had Chris Poland on there, original Megadeth guitarist on there as well. Do you keep in touch with a lot of the former members of Megadeth, or?
I do, and especially Chris. You know, Chris, I've definitely stayed in touch with. You know, Chris, once we had to have him leave the band, he and Gar. I mean, we've been very open about all this. You know, there were drug issues in the band, and of course, I had to take care of my own stuff for 2-3 years later myself. But you know, Chris, after he was out of Megadeth, he got cleaned up, and he went out. He actually played bass for the Circle Jerks. And got in a van and toured around the country and played. Chris is a killer bass player. I mean, just fantastic player, just a great musician. So, you know, as Chris and I, as we both sobered up and got cleaned up, you know, we remained friends. And it was easy to maintain a friendship because we weren't high and we weren't in the same band. And, you know, we could share a journey of a portion of our lives together. We'd always kind of get together and have a laugh over it and remember what a great experience that was, and how many people have been impacted, you know, by those couple records that we did together, you know. So, but yeah, I mean, Chris, I mean, he plays just phenomenal. I mean, his playing is great, and so to have him around as a friend and to be able to, you know, throw a little guitar down on stuff is just always great.
That's cool. Now, somebody else that was on there, a friend who I was just actually emailing with the other night, Bumblefoot.
Yeah, Bumbles. I mean, Ron is just great. I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't know how good he was until we started playing together. And we did a bass story together up in the Northeast a couple years ago, about a year and a half ago. And that, I think, is when I got to just, it's funny. I'd see him play every night, and that was great. And he would join me, and he'd play guitar for me as my band closed up the night. And that was great. But when I really got to know him, we were just driving around talking, and he was playing for me like these other, was it Sons of Anarchy? Was that the band that he had with Scott Stapp? Incredible record. And I like Scott Stapp. I like the early Creed stuff. I think it's really clever, really good stuff. And when I heard Scott sing that stuff that Ron had written, I was just like, wow, it was a shame. It was a great record that just never really happened,
Yeah.
And, Ron is, thank God he had those years in Guns N' Roses, because it really, it got him famous. So people now know who he is. And, when he does stuff, even Sons of Apollo and these things he's doing now, I mean, he's just he's a fantastic musician. He's a great singer, and he does a lot of backing vocals on our records, the stuff that me and Tom make. And, he's one of our go-to guys we call for a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Who would even picture him now being the lead singer of Asia?
I know. I mean, how cool is that? I mean,
yeah, right.
Come on. And he was in the car with us when he got the gig. He was actually out playing with me and Frank Bello when we were out doing Altitudes and Attitude. Spring of 2000. I guess that would have been last year, right? 2019, right? So we were going through the Midwest playing, and he just got the call. And so it's so cool. Again, we were just in the car driving, me, Frank, and Bubble. We were just in the car driving around the Midwest and doing these shows. And to hear Ron talk about the details of how to sing the John Wetton parts in Asia, like how to bend notes and just the detail that he understood about singing. I was just like, man, that's something that I sang in choir, and of course I sang in bands and stuff growing up, but there's just detail that Ron has that is just like, man, this guy is a true pro, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Now you guys did another song too, Simple Truth, which actually you guys donated the proceeds to the Red Cross of Italy.
Right. Well, we had, so all this stuff was kind of ramped up around, literally this week we were supposed to be in Japan and then going to Australia next week on a Ellefson solo tour with special guest Chris Poland. And of course with, the pandemic, it all got pushed back now into early 2021. But we had always planned to be putting out Simple Truth and then Over Now. So, Tom and I just decided to stay the course. And, it's funny, one day I was out riding my bike, and it just hit me as like, you know what? Let's just give the money from Simple Truth. It's our song. We wrote it. We own the whole thing, so we can do what we want without having to ask anybody's permission. And I just said, you know what? Let's just take all the money and we'll just give it to the Italian Red Cross. And part of that is because we wrote it in Milan. We wrote it when we were rehearsing for the Italian tour we did back in November. Solo tour, and our band is largely comprised of Italian guys. Our guitar player Andy, our drummer Paolo. So they were first, of course, to be really locked down over there, and so it was close to home. And I was just there in February with Megadeth and Five Finger. We just did a show there in Milan. So very close to home, with the Italians. So we just felt it right to help them out in any way that we could.
Now, Megadeth, you said you're coming here to Nashville this week, and you guys are working on the new album. The tour, is it still a go, or?
Well, we'll find out in the next couple of days. Of course, we waited as long as we possibly could, but I mean, look, it'll, whatever is going to happen, whether we're going to make the announcements from the Megadeth social media and, in the next day, actually. So, the truth of it is, there's more to it than just us. Of course, the four of us, we're ready to get out of the house and go thrash and rock with our fans. But, the promoter Live Nation, even they can't, unilaterally make the decision, because some of the governors, the states are shut down. There's cities that are shut down, and there's just, it's pretty rough to have a tour right now, Not
Right.
to mention, if anybody's gone out to restaurants, the truth of it is, the first day I went to a restaurant last week when we opened up here in Arizona, literally there was my family and another family over in the corner, and you could tell we weren't looking at the staff, like they were fine, and we trusted that our food was okay, but we were like, you could tell we're all looking sideways at the other family, because you're like, we don't trust them. Where have they been? Like, what have they been doing, And that's, I think, the biggest thing with all this getting back together at concerts and movie theaters and sporting events is, I know where I've been, but I don't know where you've been,
Exactly.
and I think that's the big problem now. Until we get a better handle on it, it just is what it is right now.
Yeah, it's such a weird situation. Whoever thought this would be happening in real life?
Oh, I know. I mean, I was just thinking about it too, just going, now I'm excited. I'm getting excited to get together with the guys and rocking a new Megadeth record. But, usually we're making a record and we're shooting some videos and taking some photos and going on tour and yeah. And again, that will happen. It's just that it usually kind of happens pretty quickly in succession, and you kind of know your destiny, your year is kind of lined out, and now it's a little segregated, but, look, I'm sure this too shall pass. We'll get through this, and, next year, 2021, I'm confident will be a much better and different year for everybody.
Now, how about, Altitudes and Attitudes? Are you guys going to do any more music together, or?
I think so. We're actually scheduled right now to be on the Monsters of Rock cruise in February 2021. So I said to Frank last week when we were chatting, I just mentioned about us trying to get together and do a new song or two. We usually record everything with their producer, the Anthrax producer, Jay Rustin, out in LA. So, there's obviously challenges, of just being able to get out to LA and
Sure.
And lay it down. We have the material. I mean, Frank and I are never at a loss for songs, so that's easy, to lay a couple of tunes down. So hopefully a moment will present itself where we could be together and put some music down together again.
I love that stuff. Have you ever heard the comparison, kind of like a Foo Fighters style music?
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I mean, that was kind of the first natural comparison, and in a good way, And,
yeah, absolutely.
And, we know Grohl, of course, and, Dave's just one of the good dudes of the neighborhood, and Frank just has a great sound to his voice, and he sits really well inside of his songs. Kind of the very thing I was saying earlier. My voice doesn't always sit so well inside of my songs. I can compose it fine, but I guess I'm aware enough to go, okay, I can write the melody, I can write the lyric, but I'm not the right guy to sing this. This needs a different attitude around it. Because singing isn't just about hitting the notes. It's about the attitude that you convey when you're singing. So to me, when I write something, I'll go, okay, I want to hear something really either super clean on this, or I want to hear something pretty frickin' dark and gnarly, and then I kind of go find the person who's right to sing on it, and for the solo stuff we're doing, Tom hits the mark pretty well on a lot of this stuff.
Nice. Well, Dave, this has been truly an honor. I've been waiting years to be able to do this, to talk to you.
Nice. Well, thank you, Dave. Appreciate it, man.
I was hoping I was going to get to talk to you last year at Rockin' Pod, but I didn't get lucky enough to get you.
Yeah. Oh, well, now we get our own moment without all the distractions of everyone else around,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, dude, you're truly an inspiration. All the things you do and all, I truly admire everything you do. Music and outside of music, you're highly respected right here from me. So I want to thank you again for taking the time out. And if I can just get you to cut a quick ID for me before I let you go.
Sure. Yep.
Dave Ellefson, and you're listening to the Rock and Ragni Show.
Rock and Ragni?
Yep.
Yeah. Hi, this is David Ellefson, and you're listening to the Rock and Ragni Show.
Awesome. Dave, thanks so much, man. And hey, maybe I'll see you in Nashville this week.
Hey, let me know. Hit me if you're down there.
I live here, so.
Yeah, okay, cool. That's even better. So you're there.
Yeah,
I'll be down there for a couple of weeks. So.
I moved here 8-9 months ago from Philly, so.
Yeah, and it seems pretty chill there, right? I mean, Dave, everybody said it's pretty relaxed, right? It
totally is.
Yeah.
They opened restaurants this past week, 50% capacity. Just the only thing we haven't done is like that, no live entertainment yet.
Yeah. Well, in due time.
Absolutely.
Cool.
All right,
man.
Thanks so much, man.
Thanks.
Take care.
Bye. See you. Bye.
Bye.